yeah, I mean, anything, a classic book or story, and then somebody's inspired by it, which is always the hope when you write something, I guess, that, somebody else is going to read it and be inspired by it, and it doesn't just sit in a vacuum somewhere collecting dust. So this piece inspired um, a symphony written by a female who extracted the character Penelope, um, to examine sort of her reaction to the return of Odysseus, and what her reaction was to that. And then the music itself just sort of, because it's so, I don't think it's avant-garde, but it's not, it's not a typical symphony. It's sort of a fusion of the classic and the modern and the pain and the struggle of it all, like kind of figuring out what to do after living on your own for 10 years as a woman who's been abandoned, and that now you're not, but who is this scrappy looking guy. And I just think taking all of that and putting that into a piece of music, taking the literary, translating it into music, and then presenting it in a whole nother way, opens it up to another audience. But I was curious about how an English teacher regards, the sort of the evolution of a classic work of art that has a point of view and has a journey, a hero's journey. And here we are now, we're talking about a female perspective and another way of looking at that. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what it inspired. Maybe you listened to it and you fell asleep. I don't know. Maybe it did nothing for you, but it's possible that you might have some interesting insight into, I think, the bigger picture of the importance of literature and music and the humanities, and how it makes our brains sort of spark in a different way, and how these stories are universal. Like the women today can relate to something that's ancient, because of the way it's presented, or because of the themes that are constant in humanity.
Right.
So that's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah.
Well, you've captured it all for sure. I and your daughter can certainly tell you that I've approached literature in the course that I taught as with an overarching theme of the journey. One semester we concentrate on the hero, and another semester on the heroine. And I always got into a little trouble with students because they often didn't, they can see the male as a hero, but they cannot see all the females that we read about as heroines, which I think addresses some more global issues in our society today. So yeah, and above all, if literature does not speak to us now, then it's not something we should be even dealing with. So I've always tried to find authentic themes and relevance and comparisons with our lives today. And I found this, and I'd not known about it before, quite honestly. But I found the story not only compelling, but the music haunting, and that the music. And I'm not an expert in terms of music. I like what I like, and basically that's it. But I found that the music led me in a different direction. I mean, obviously, I know the story of Penelope, and the themes that are inherent in it, and but I what the music did is allow me to branch off a little bit in terms of what I was feeling and looking for. So I saw Penelope, the usual, sort of the stay-at-home mom, who did her role for 20 years. And then this man comes, and she doesn't know who he is, but he's looking for her or for someone. And she to many is the same person for 20 years. I didn't see that here. I saw a lot of change in her. I saw her as a woman who wanted to welcome her husband home, but was unsure. And in the process, going through what he might have gone through, and the lures and the snares and his man life, Circe, Calypso, Lotus Eaters, all of these, even nearing death, and then physically going to the underworld, she stays at home. But here I saw her not just worrying, not just going through her life, but trying to imagine his life and how it would affect her, how their relationship would change. Then I saw a warrior coming home, and then you look at our lives today, and constantly, whether it's Vietnam vets and what they're enduring, and I've just read a couple of books, historical fiction, about Vietnam and the role women played, and again, I couldn't help but see a similarity. Yes, the anguished hero coming home, and home is not the same. You expect it to be, but it's not. And Penelope shows that. I mean, her feelings and the music that supports it show the agony that she goes through. And I don't think Homer sees that. I don't think Homer or highlighted that. And I understand it's a different time. But she, and I even at the end, I don't see that she's accepted what has happened. She has grown because she's gone through a journey herself, but she hasn't like become a superhero for it. In terms of what we would define as a hero, but as far as growth within, I think that's the major lesson that I got from the entire work. Anyway, have I talked too much? Yes, I have.
No,
No,
not at
no.
all. No.
I love the points of view. So here's the man's point. I didn't know much about, I know of Homer's Odyssey. Penelope is a character in it. But what fascinated me was the first 2 minutes of music, because it was so haunting. And that was just watching the trailer, because I had never heard this piece before. And from that trailer, I went and did some research looking up what Sarah Kirkland, so who had written the music, and then also it's Ellen McLaughlin, who is the librettist. And you put those pieces together, and it's exactly what you were just talking about, Selma. It's history, thousands of years later. Some things haven't changed in what we're all up against, but point of view has. In Homer's time, at the founding of this country, who's considered a citizen? Even that question has come up many different times. And so here we are today on the verge of, who knows what kind of world change is upon us. And this is not just an introspection, but it's a real ability to look at it from a different point of view. Knock on the door, some guy's there. I think I know him. I think it's familiar. Who's ever looked before at the 20-year separation and what that really means on the people left behind? And do they understand what the person who was away felt like? Fascinating. It really has been.
Yeah, and the idea, the transformative experience of war or the Odyssey, the journey, renders somebody unrecognizable. Like, we've all been to 20-year high school reunions. Like, you can pretty much tell who's who, but that idea that you're not the same person, and that's an external thing. But for Penelope, perhaps the change is internal, like the internal transformation of doing all those things that she did to you know, creating the shroud and then unraveling it because she didn't want it to end, because she didn't want to have to deal with the next thing. And, you know, what that does to a person, you know, every day, sort of counting the days and the years that way. So it's, you know, it's not like earth shattering, it's every day.
Right.
As you said, you know, we all know someone who served in the military or been away or been waiting for someone on an endless journey. It's just, this is what the humanities does for us, the music and the literature and the art. It takes the everyday and it creates a way for us to relate to it in another way. Like you said, as a teacher, and you've taught this, but yet you know, listening to it as a piece of music, approaching it differently, changes the way you think about it. You know, and what you said about, you know, young women, smart young women, not really, or women and men not being able to recognize the female as a hero as readily as the male character. You know, that's something it's hard to imagine in the year 2024 that we're still there. But
well, and you would be surprised. No, you wouldn't be surprised, but there are many young women who consistently take that role, and are happy to do it. I mean, and I guess maybe that's where we are. You know, you assume the role that you wish and go for it. The other thing too that captivated me a little bit more than it did by reading, and Odysseus's epithet consistently is wily Odysseus. He's always scheming. He always knows how to get out of a rut. The Cyclops or whatever it is, he finds a way. And here it's turned to lies. It's not wily, which is crafty and has a positive side, but you know, Penelope recognizes lying. I mean, it's just outright lying. You're lying to people. You're lying. Are you lying to me now too? And I think that's extremely insightful as another aspect of the growth of
yeah, how we interpret someone's actions and character. You know, what's the difference between being wily and being deceptive? Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting. Well, I hope that people that come to see it will be open to all of that, whether they know the story. Like, you don't have to be an English teacher to understand the story. I think we all, you know, understand the literary journey of heroes in any even movies we watch. You know, we see it all the time, even in Marvel movies. You know, there's some hero on a journey and they get to the other side of it. But I loved the idea that Symphony New Hampshire was taking this piece by a female composer, with a female voice, telling part of a story that has always been sort of a male dominant story, and giving it to an audience to interpret in a new way. And we don't get that very often. You know, it's like how many, name me a 5 female artists, painters that are, you know, world famous. Like, good luck. You know, you can think of Georgia O'Keeffe, Whistler's mother. Was she
dead.
You know,
you know, they're all dead.
yeah, and they're all dead. Like, but there's so many women doing amazing things. As Nora Ephron once said, "Be the heroine of your own life." That's my little quote on my Facebook page. You know, women aren't told to do that often enough, or we don't get to rise to those places. You know, there was a movie out recently of a female, you know, symphony conductor. You know,
Oh,
I never
yes.
thought about that, right? How come that's not an everyday thing? You know, it's just, I don't know. It's not even sexism, or, I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's just perception. And this is an opportunity for people to just start thinking a little differently about the roles we have and what it means and the perspectives to be the one waiting at home. But that doesn't mean you're just sitting there knitting a shawl or a shroud or whatever you're, there's so much that you've had to deal with.
And even, you know, her having spent so many years warding off the suitors also speaks to her resilience. I think, you know, often we see it as, well, you know, she didn't have anything else to do, so she relied on the one craft that she did know, which is weaving, and that's woman's work. But she used it to her advantage and would have continued except for the treachery of women. So not only do we see women traitors in her own home, but look at Calypso and Circe, both of whom tried to manipulate Odysseus. He triumphs over them. In her world, in her home in Ithaca, she's discovered. So in a sense, she doesn't triumph. So that's another little aspect as well.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm sure you could do a whole, you know, you could teach a whole semester on that.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to back us out to the overview piece of this, right? So here's this symphony taking place at the Rex on the 2nd of March. It's 60 minutes in length. It starts with a knocking on the door, and this guy comes back to something he thinks is familiar and meets up with, it's obviously his wife, but she also goes, "Who are you and where have you been all this time?" And you don't really need to know Homer's Odyssey to appreciate the interactions. The lyrics, you know, are a little entwined. You have to listen carefully. But certainly the music does guide. It guided me as well to, oh, there's something going on here to pay more attention to. And I talked with Roger Pallia, who is the conductor, and he talks about the song cycle that it represents and that it involves jazz. And there's so many different pieces of music that fit together. So it's almost like it's not a concert and you come out singing it, but there are enough pieces that it kind of weaves you in through the story. And I think that's where, as I listen to the two of you talk, the value is it's an hour to unplug from your phone and your screens and contemplate or think about these kinds of issues that we never take the time to think about anymore. We see it. We all know somebody, oh, this is horrible and this is terrible and I don't like what doom scrolling. And so here's a chance to reflect back on yourself. And as you said, Carol, right? You took Nora Ephron's quote as something that's your banner that you go into battle every day with. If you want to carve out a good life and be the heroine of your own story, if you want to lead your own business or startup, you still need that time for self to reflect. And then you also need that community around you that supports you in doing it, for better or for worse. And then you can tie it to every level of politics going forward and turn it into quite the conversation.
And that's what Penelope did not have. She did not have a support group. We were talking about that before. Odysseus had his men, but he was in charge. And ultimately, even when his men weren't around, there were women to uplift him, to make him feel good in their more traditional role. But Penelope did not have that. Even her son takes off, you know, when he's old enough. Her mother-in-law dies, her father-in-law dies. She's left alone. She's, you know, bereft. But this Penelope has the inner core of I don't know, resilience, maybe.
Yes.
Which I hope that translates to the audience, particularly women. I mean, despite what she's been through, despite what she's still, I mean, this guy is coming and he's supposed to be here, but really, who is he? I mean, is he just going to take her for all she's worth, which is what all the other men want to do anyway? And then this one too, lies, lies, lies. She, you know, constantly.
All right, quick little exercise. Think about 5 words, singular words, key words that you would use to describe the value of a person, particularly a woman showing up for this concert. You used resilience. I like that one a lot. What other words would you put out there as reflective of a reason to go or something you might take away from it. You see resilience.
I mean, certainly self-reflection. I don't know if that's a one word or compound word, but
Hyphenated, it works.
It makes us go in a little bit, I think, to internalize it, and think about your own life and your own response to things in life.
Yeah, I would say affirming. Yes, a woman alone endures a lot, but I guess it has to do with resilience, but can overcome. And universal. The themes that are here transcend time and place. And I think that's what literature does, what the arts do. They take us to another plane so that we can understand humanity, our humanness, the human condition. Those are too many words, I know, Keith, but
well, it is a reflection back on your life. You're out of, it's not about out of body experience, but kind of blasting off and looking back at the planet Earth. So your life from a distance is seen, reflection. Good.
Yeah, I mean, that's what art does to us too, is like, this is a creation of complete fiction out of somebody's imagination, but yet we can use it to actually think about things that are real and tangible in our own lives or in other people's lives. Or how many times, has somebody made a reference to some character in literature or some famous movie quote that resonates so much that you find yourself repeating it in a moment, like, well, remember that thing. Like, it's because art is part of what we are. It's you can't remove it from the human experience, because it's just too much part of the fabric of humanity. Like, it's.
Well, I like to use the term art and the arts, which I always capitalize the letter A, and my editor always tries to undo that.
Well, because you shouldn't overcapitalize.
Well, but I do it very specific.
Doesn't change the meaning of it by capitalizing it, really. There's no such thing as the arts. It's
E. Cummings did all kinds of things that weren't allowed, but to me, the arts allows you to communicate in a different language, or in many cases, it provides a universal platform to communicate, because we may not all speak English or Spanish or any language. I mean, there were 57 different languages spoken in Central High School right now, or at least. But for some reason, music, theater,
67 languages from over 30 countries.
There we go.
There you go. She's got the crib notes.
If we want some common boundaries, or not even a common point of reference, music, whether it's the Caribbean Fest, doesn't matter what it is, we all recognize without the filter of saying, what does that mean? That comes second. What first catches your ear is sound. What first catches your eye is an image, color, black and white. And that becomes the basis of communication when you don't speak the same language, whether it's generational or country of origin. And I just think that, again, my hat's off to what Symphony New Hampshire is doing. And this isn't their first foray into this either. And at the Rex, we got to witness Fiddler's Tale, which was a young man using music as a tool for social change, Danny Rivera. So it's an interesting kind of concept. And it's just such a great way to move forward with the diversity that we have. So I want to thank you for joining me on this.
I was just going to reflect back to the beginning. Yes. I know this is way too long for you to edit, but when you talked about the haunting, the sensation of, the haunting feeling at the beginning, and it, that's the other part of the universal truth of music. You take something like Homer's Odyssey, if you can't read his words, if you don't have a translation, then you don't know what it says. But if you listen to this song, you feel something, it's like going to a an opera in Italian and you don't speak Italian, but you cry your way through part of it because the music finds a way to translate the
Right.
emotion, the human emotion. And I think that's the part that is why it's important to take something like this and and examine it musically, because it hits in another way.
That's true. And if I might just be allowed a couple last, I wrote some notes because I wanted to be certain to mention a couple of things. I mentioned the movement, particularly the one about on the underworld, Hades, death, which it started out as a rather scary, haunting, and then calm, and then a bang. That last final bang, I think, was for an awakening. Even though it's the underworld, there's some sense of a continuum. So what he sees in the underworld, his friend, whatever. Yes, okay, but what are you going to take from that and move on to? And then the last thing that I observed, we talked about lies, and there's a lot of it in there, but truth and lies, they become intertwined. And I think that also is a story. How do you decipher what from what? And can we? Ultimately, we're talking about the universality of this work, both in terms of literature and music and the human condition. Let's be truthful. Sometimes they're so intertwined that it's difficult to take out what is fact and what is not. And that's reality. It's not like a happy ending. They live happily ever after for the next 10 years, but it's also a growth. It's a journey that they've both been through, both the good and the bad, the lies and the truth, and here we are.
Very true. You say that the truth and lies, and it goes through different generations. And so I'll add one more piece based on the conversation with the conductor. We're at a time on the verge of what AI means and how do you differentiate truth from fiction.
Right.
And at the same time, in this piece is one of the musicians that are present. He didn't call him a musician or this person a musician. I don't know gender, but one of the people who are part of this group doing it is working from a laptop. So there is a computer, because there is computer generated music and sound that's part of what they're going to work through on the rehearsal. Is this a physical need for the conductor to be able to coordinate to keep the timing for this person that's pacing, particularly as a song cycle. So is that concert, is that, it really ties all of these themes together in a very interesting way. So thank you for your time and for the ability to kind of explore some of these things. This is Communicast. It's good people doing great things in our communities, and it makes it a fun conversation.
Carol, I have to thank you too, because as I was saying before you came on, first thing in the morning, it used to be you read the paper, but now it's, going to Inklink. But I also have to tell you that, some of these themes we're talking about, the universality of the written word, because Homer, it was written, the music score is written as well, the lyrics are written. And I really have to commend you for every single day speaking to me, speaking to so many people, and whatever you have to say. Sometimes it's like, okay, really, she wants to talk about the Milky Way. I'm not interested in that. But the way you do it allows me to be drawn in. So, and that's a gift. And thank you for sharing that gift.